Kubi messaged me on Telegram. He said, I think we have maybe too much like PBS FUD. So I'm going to be doing something I usually don't do, which is do the opposite of that, which is defend PBS. So I think, let me start with a little FUD, first of all, because you can't have a PBS talk without FUD. I just want to talk about kind of the main critique of what PBS has become, and I think it comes out of misspecified goals and maybe unrealistic goals at the start. So these were kind of the goals that I looked at when I read the original PBS posts on ETH Research. We wanted to decentralize block production. Okay, we didn't necessarily do that. We wanted to prevent the centralization of staking pools. I think for the most part, we didn't really do that either. We wanted to ensure a level playing field for all validators to earn rewards proportional to their stake. That one I think we did pretty well on. And we wanted to do this thing called democratize MEV, which I don't know what that is, but I don't really think we got there either. I guess I had this video, but I don't know if it's working on here. But basically, this video just showed the evolution of who is winning blocks over time. But I think we can just skip to the end. I removed the nameplates, but hopefully the colors are here. This is just from Relay Scan from last week, from this morning. You can see, I think this adds up to quite a bit of the percentage of blocks built by just 3 parties. I guess there was 3 parties in the French election, so maybe this is democratized MEV, but I don't really think this is what we meant when we said that. On the relays, similar situation. I added the 2 blocks root relays together. So you can see that we're kind of in a similar situation there. And this is kind of why a lot of people would say PBS may have failed, right? Because the whole goal was to decentralize MEV and democratize MEV, but we didn't get there, and we got kind of to where everybody was worried about getting. And so the question is an oligopolistic builder and relay market any better than an oligopolistic MEV-aware validator set with the same kind of percentages that we just saw? So my answer is actually yes. And there's going to be a few reasons for this. First of all, I just wanted to shout out this paper, which shows that, you know, the one thing that I said, hey, maybe we actually achieved that from the goals, was that we kind of leveled the playing field of MEV rewards if you run a validator. And this paper kind of formalizes that and shows that in a more rigorous sense. But like, why do we care about that? Like, does the validator set decentralization actually matter if Beaverbill is building 50% of the blocks? You know, Titan is obviously very nice, and so they build 25% of the blocks, so those are okay. But you know, I think here are a few reasons that you might say this. So I crossed out this one already, which is preserve a long tail of solar stakers for inclusion lists. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I don't think this matters at all. I think there are better ways to do this than inclusion lists. But I do think that there are really important reasons that we actually want decentralization of the validator set beyond just it's decentralized and decentralization good. And the first thing, which is like potentially very bad, is this thing called malicious reorgs or selfish proposing. You may be familiar with selfish mining, which is when a Bitcoin miner waits to release the block and mines on their own block. There's a similar thing in the proof of stake world that's possible even in LMD Ghost. And it's especially possible if you are a Beaver build sized validator. So if you are a 50% validator, it is very easy to do these selfish proposing attacks on the current version of Ethereum. And I think it's very good that we don't see that. The other thing, which I think has been kind of beaten to death at this point, is this multi-block MEV concern. But it's been beaten to death because it's an important concern, which is we don't want censorship. So for example, we have these huge DAI auctions, these DAI liquidation auctions where there will be maybe a 10,000 ETH liquidation that goes on. And the way it works is it's a Dutch auction. So the price starts at, say, 3,000 and then slowly decreases. You get more and more of a discount over time. Well, the problem is that in the Dutch auction theory, you just take the arbitrage as soon as it's profitable. But we know that there's censorship possible in Ethereum. And so if you are somebody who controls 50% of the slots and you're a sophisticated actor, you might say, there's a 50% probability that tomorrow I will have the slot. And so if today there's an opportunity that's worth $1 and tomorrow it will be worth $10 if we don't harvest it, I might be willing to pay $1 plus epsilon to make sure nobody takes it today. And then tomorrow, it'll be worth, in expectation, $5 for me, because 50% of the time, I'm going to be the validator. And this is, I think, a majorly overlooked benefit of PBS, which is that it's made it so that Beaverbuild doesn't own, or any builder doesn't own the slot before the slot arrives. And this means if you were to delay something, say there's a $1 opportunity today that's worth $10 tomorrow, if you do delay that, then you're not guaranteed any benefit from that, because you're going to be competing for the $10 opportunity tomorrow, and all of your profit is going to be competed away. And I think that's a major thing that we need to make sure we keep up with, and some of the proposals around tickets and MEV auctions don't necessarily do this, because they sell the block in advance, and they lead to these multi-block MEV concerns. And the last thing, which is basically an advertisement for a future talk that Malesh is going to give, is prevent these monopolistic reserve prices, which I also think is not very well discussed. This is another advertisement for a paper on proof of stake selfish proposing attacks, which I think is something we should start to think about, especially on chains like Solana, where you can just censor votes because they're transactions. So something I think we should start to think about more is these selfish proposer attacks and designing systems that aren't weak to them. So let me just talk about this. This is basically going to be an advertisement for a more in-depth talk that Malesh is going to give later this week. But when you have a situation where one of the builders owns the ticket, basically, they can not just sell it in a just-in-time auction, but sell it in an unfair just-in-time auction. Basically, they can set a reserve price. I mean, I don't know, unfair, I see Kevin shaking his head in the back. So maybe it's like not unfair, but they can sell the optimal auction. Maybe that's a more charitable term. We know how to sell something in a revenue maximizing way. There's a paper about it from like 1970 by Meyerson. And if you just set a reserve price, then you can maximize your revenue. So we have a picture here of what that looks like. We have 3 different builders with slightly different capabilities. One of them, is winning more often. Actually, if you look at the probabilities, we kind of did these probabilities so that it looks like the probabilities I showed you in my second slide. So the pink one is winning like 50% of the time, and the yellow one is winning like 33% of the time, and the green one is winning like 1/6 of the time. So if you look at that, right, and then we did the math of what happens when they buy the ticket, and then they do the optimal reserve price. And what we see is that we get, even though, for example, Titan has the highest value block 33% of the time, they actually don't win 33% of the time because of the reserve price that Beaver would set. And similarly, the other way around. So basically, the takeaway here is one really good thing about PBS is that Coinbase owns the slot and not one of the builders. And we should try to keep it that way. And that's basically all I had. I know I had a 30-minute slide. I don't know if I went 30 minutes, but I wanted to make that point in particular because I don't think people have thought about it too much. Yeah, you want to? All right, we can take a few questions, I think, if anybody has any. I guess I just nailed it so hard that nobody has any questions. Right? So the question was, what do I think about a tester-proposer separation? Yeah, so I think the problem, so Vitalik calls this thing proposer quarantining. And I think that's basically what I'm describing is amazing about PBS, is that we've somehow prevented what's happening on Solana today, where searchers are going out, acquiring a bunch of the stake, and maybe they're not doing something bad today, but they could be potentially doing something bad in the future when they figure out how to do it. I think we have basically a tester proposer separation through PBS right now. The proposals like tickets and like execution auctions, which are implementations of this idea, actually give away that, because what they do is sell, for example, in the execution auctions, which is the latest ETH research post, they would sell it 32 slots in advance. And then all of these problems, like the thing I'm showing you on the slide here, would happen anyway. And so we would actually give away our, what I would call, a tester proposer separation in that sense. Like, or I guess it's not a tester proposer separation in that sense. It's more like the person who owns the slot and the person who's buying the slot are not the same person. And that's something that we would give away with tickets or with the execution auctions proposal.